efficient design of general-purpose mixed-traffic engines ever built in Britain. A total of 842 were completed between 1934 and 1951. They were found practically everywhere in the British Isles, but were particularly prevalent on the territory of the native LMS. The Black 5 was always common in Scotland, and a number of preserved examples have found a home there. We start at Bowness on the 1st of 4th, as Sovereign number 44871 prepares for the day's duties. Since 1979, this has been the base for the Scottish Railway Preservation Society, who have created their home on the Greenfield site. Sovereign was built in 1945 at Crewe Works and is one of the 17 survivors. As Universal made of all work, they were invaluable. All were still in service until 1959. Members of the cast survived in the northwest of England until the very last days of British Rail scheme in 1968. It's a cold morning and the points are stiff as Sovereign departs for Birkhill. On a busy weekend, the carriages can be full, with 300 passengers on each train. Birkhill station is only a few years old. Passenger trains terminate here, but beyond, the line joins the Edinburgh-Glasgow main line. The original railway once served a great centre of industry, which produced iron, coal, timber and clay. It has all disappeared, and the line now provides a service for visitors. A modified Black 5 design was later adopted by British Rail as one of its 12 standard types. Another 172 of these British Rail 5MTs were built, but they were never as popular with the enginemen as the original Black 5. Kinneil Halt, once a terminus, is now only a request stop, and trains rarely pause on their way down the line. The dock near here was once a busy harbour with hoists to take coal directly from the railway wagons into the holds of waiting ships. Sovereign is also kept busy with mainline operations. On a misty November day in 1993, the first steam for over 10 years ran between Stirling and Inverness, thanks to a special excursion organised by ScotRail and the Scottish Railway Preservation Society. The Highland Main Line runs for 118 miles from Perth to Inverness, and although never electrified, it's rare to see preserved steam on this line. Sovereign was the ideal choice of locomotive, as the Black Fives were once familiar sights on the Highland Line. North of Perth, the old Highland Railway follows the River Tay and the Tunnel until the line branches north through the narrow defile of Killiecrankie. Here, Sovereign clings to the steeply wooded hillside before plunging into the Killiecrankie Tunnel. Between Mare Atholl and Dalwhinnie, the line is double track and steepens to 170 on a 16-mile-long climb. At Downacaddoch, near the start of the ascent, Sovereign climbs into the mist and has to work hard to maintain momentum. The summit of Glamorgan is still a demanding task, and at 1,484 feet, it is the highest summit in the country. Having arrived at Dalwhinnie, Sovereign takes a brief rest. The pause provides an opportunity to see this splendid locomotive at close quarters, and dozens of people have gathered on the platform to watch her depart. But first, she must wait for a northbound diesel express. Since preservation, Sovereign has also worked the West Highland Line, as well as travelling south to take part in the anniversary run of the famous 15 Guinness Special. Black Fives can also be found in England. On the Great Central Railway, number 5231 is being used to provide driver experience courses. Built in 1936, this was one of the last Black Fives to be withdrawn, and she's been returned to her original LMS livery.
K4 or one of these?
Throughout the 1920s and 1930s, Richard Mansell produced a number of simple and reliable locomotives which worked throughout the entire Southern Railway system, and many of their features were adopted as standard practice. Today, they can still be seen operating on the wonderfully restored Bluebell Railway. Q-Class number 541 is the sole survivor of her class. As people arrive at the station, 541 waits to work the first passenger train of the day. Since her arrival on the Bluebell in 1978, 541 has undergone extensive restoration. This has enabled her to clock up some of the highest mileages on the railway. The Q-Class is an 060 tender locomotive intended for goods and light passenger duties and was the last of Richard Mansell's locomotive designs. Introduced in 1938, 20 were built. The last member of the class was withdrawn in 1965. Leaving Sheffield Park, the line heads north through Halstead Keynes. In common with most goods engines, Q-Class locomotives settled down to quiet but useful lives away from the public eye. Number 541 was based at Guildford, Horsham and Bournemouth. Withdrawn in 1964, she found her way to Woodham Scrapyard at Barry. She was rescued in 1973 and returned to steam 10 years later. Until 1990 was the terminus of the line, and number 541 pulls slowly into the platform before running round the train. Sheffield Park, U-Class number 1618 is fired up in preparation for our day's duties.
you're running trouble. An extra 5 minutes spent makes for an easy day. You know what you're doing? We put one on here for ease of disposal.
Number 1618 was also designed by Richard Mills and built in Brighton in 1928. Nicknamed U-boats, these U-class mobiles became standard mixed-traffic locomotives throughout the entire Southern Railway system. Although only the second engine to be rescued from the renowned scrapyard in Barry, number 1618 had to wait until 1977 before a move to the Bluebell enabled her to enter regular service again.
Well, I like driving the U-Class. It's a very easy machine to drive. It's very economical. It does whatever it wanted to do. But I haven't really got any favourites. I'm quite willing to have a go on any steam engine. One day someone said, oh, there's a steam railway starting up, the Bluebell Railway, and I came along. That was back in 1960. Eventually I drifted into the loco department because it's really what I wanted to do. I worked my way through from cleaner, fireman, from senior fireman, eventually to driver. And that's where I am now.
Mansell's locomotive policy predated that of British Rail by nearly 30 years. He wanted a minimum number of classes with wide route availability and maximum component standardization. The new class were derived from the earlier 264 River class tank engines, which were rebuilt following a number of derailments, culminating in a particularly serious one at Sevenoaks in August 1927. Although the U-class mainly worked passenger trains, including on the secondary lines out of Waterloo, this was really a mixed traffic locomotive. Fired, fueled and watered, number 1618 is now almost ready to depart. But first, there's a train to make up. Pulling out of Sheffield Park, 1618 runs straight onto Freshfield Bank and a long climb up to Horsted Keynes. the U-Class slows to greet the permanent way gang. Arrival at Horsted Quays, and here the passengers can disembark. The famous Ibert moguls are mixed traffic 260s, introduced by the LMS in 1946. One example, number 46443, can be seen on the preserved Severn Valley Railway. The first 20 of these 2MTs were built under the direction of H.G. Ibert, but production later continued under British Rail. They were designed to replace the aging small locomotives used on secondary and branch line duties. Despite the nickname Mickey Mouse, they were incredibly reliable and formed the basis for two of British Rail's standard designs which followed. They were popular with footplate crews, and despite having wheels only 5 foot in diameter, they were easily capable of speeds of up to 70 miles an hour. Their beauty, number 46443, takes over from the Great Marquis at the head of the train to Bridgnorth. Number 46443 was one of 128 locomotives of the 2MT class. She was built in 1950 at Crewe at a cost of £8,734.
It was the second stop we went in anyway, wasn't it?
After 11 years at Derby on local passenger trains and as station pilot, the engine was transferred to Saltley for more pilot, shunting and trip work. She was overhauled following a collision with a Type 2 diesel. In 1966 she was transferred to Newton Heath, Manchester, the last haunt of the small Ibert moguls. Withdrawn in March 1967, she was brought by Mr. Richard Wilcox and became the Severn Valley Railway's second steam locomotive, taking an active part in the reopening of the line in 1970. In 1975, the engine ran in red livery for the film The 7% Solution, and since preservation has clocked up the highest mileage of all the Severn Valley locomotives. She is also operated on the national network.
Mm.